Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to one and all. Good to have you here. And I'm especially pleased, amidst all of the nightmarish horror on the news front, to take you to a better place today, even if that place, unbelievably, is the Allegheny County Jail. Believe me, it is a better thing that we are going to be talking about. It's going to, well, I'm just really looking forward to introducing you to, uh-oh, can I get you in here? Uh-oh.
I think I'm in.
Oh, you are in. God, Susan, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even seeing something's odd on my screen. Oh, thank God. All I have here is it says drop. The only thing I could have done is dropped you. My God, something's wrong with my screen. But thank God you're there. Oh gosh, whoo! Disaster narrowly averted. This is Susan Stein, folks. She is. I'm just one of the more extraordinary people I know. And I'm privileged to know the work she does in prisons, in schools, on stage, all making things better. She's one of the people who truly is using her time on this earth to move it forward. And Susan, I mean, there's so much we can talk about with you, but today we really do want to sort of zero in on the work you're doing along with Duquesne University at the Allegheny County Jail. I just want to start with that, but I'm not saying we aren't going to get into some of the other stuff. Okay?
Right. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction too, and thanks for those words.
Oh,
They mean a lot. The
well,
times are hard, and it feels over these last couple of weeks in particular, it feels like just kind of focusing just on this work is what I can do, what I can, what can we do in our lives? We can just do our piece. So you nailed that when you said that.
yeah, no, I hear you, and I'm sure, in terms of your own, your own soul, it's got to be good to be able to focus on something in which you have some control and you can be helpful to other humans. Because we're struggling, most of us. Okay, so the program is actually a class that is available at Duquesne University called Democracy and Justice, right? Sounds like a law school class.
Right. It's through the so you're talking about the class that because there are actually a couple, but you're talking about the one that was in the public source article. So hopefully people will read that because it's still up and available. That was an Inside Out class that happened this past fall. Inside Out is an organization that Lori Pompa started it at Temple University, maybe 27, 28 years ago. I'm not exactly sure, but it was more than 25. And she had this great idea of, well, if you're going to teach criminology and social justice and restorative justice, instead of sitting in the classroom with these undergraduates, how about bringing them inside the prison? And then the class could be with the incarcerated people. And that caught on and has become actually a national program. So Duquesne is part of that program. And so that work this fall was through Inside Out. So anyone who is in there, like Norm Conti, the sociologist, the head of sociology at Duquesne, who organized and kind of spearheads all of it, and Jeff McCurry, my co-teacher, who's in the philosophy department. We are all trained in Inside Out. We go through a training, and the class is half Duquesne students, and they're undergraduates, and they're taking, the class you mentioned, probably part of their sociology, requirement, that part of what they're doing, and then the other half of the class is incarcerated men at the Allegheny County Jail, who in this fall have not yet been sentenced. I mean, usually they're not sentenced in jail, but sometimes we do work with sentenced men who are just waiting to be moved to another facility. It was challenging in a couple of ways. It was the largest class that I taught. I mean, it had, 37, 38 students, and the range was large.
The range being what? I mean, in terms of education, in terms of.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Because the class, is, so on Tuesdays they're, all those students are with Norm, and that's sociology, and then on Thursdays they're with Jeff and me. And they were with Jeff first because we couldn't get into the jail right away. It was interesting when you said control, having some control. One thing about work in prisons that you learn right away is you have no control.
Oh, you don't? None. Yeah.
No. And so you're always at the hands of whatever the powers that be. And you have to just kind of make your peace with that and hold on to kind of the greater work of, I'm going to get in there. But I have driven twice from Cleveland to the Allegheny County Jail, arranged the whole week around that, and found out in the morning that, I get there and the jail is in lockdown.
Oh, wow.
So the class is not happening.
Okay, so much for having control. But I'm curious now. I'm imagining this class, and you've got you said almost 40 students. And half of them are what, in these orange jumpsuits or something, and they're
lime green.
Lime green. What do I know? Lime green.
Yeah, different. No, it's a different color, right?
Okay, and they're and they have no control of their lives. They are in prison. And the others are these fresh-faced 18 and 19-year-old kids from from who knows where, from around here. And the two coming together. The two coming together are like, do they even speak the same language?
I mean, it's beautiful, and it's a brilliant kind of idea. And having just experienced it, it was a beautiful and powerful experience. Not that it didn't have its struggles, but we, I mean, the common language is humanity, and we have to get there. Norm is an amazing teacher and human being. And so he was already working with them when I came on. The reason I came into the class is because part of the proposal for this class was that Hamlet would be used as a case study for restorative justice.
Oh.
So that
you're talking about
Hamlet in the class.
You're talking about Shakespeare's
Hamlet, the play.
Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Yeah.
Was somehow now to be the centerpiece for this class about justice, restorative justice, democracy, and now all of a sudden we got you, an actor, excuse me, coming in because Shakespeare's being used as a tool here. It seems
Right, because they had done it before, but they used kind of more critical,
yeah, but
critical work and using videos. But I said, no, let's bring the Hamlet into our bodies. Let's bring Shakespeare into our mouths. We can do this. We don't need to read other people's ideas of Hamlet. So, I mean, this is for their final. They're going to do a panel at the end where they're taking on these characters from Hamlet, and then it's before the play ends, and so they will have kind of researched and kind of live their characters, and then they work out the idea of this, restorative justice in this panel as these characters. And
so in other words,
I
wait, can I just
the Hamlet part?
Insert? So anyone who's
Yeah.
ever seen Hamlet, at the end, the stage is littered with bodies. I mean, everybody practically,
Right.
everybody's dead. They've killed each other. So what you do with these students
Well,
in the
except Horatio and
yeah, except
Fortinbras, but
somebody's
we don't get to the end.
no, somebody's
Right.
got to tell the story. But you
Right.
these so here are this class, and they are asked as they channel these characters to reimagine a different ending, right? What else could have happened?
Well, I wasn't part. I wasn't part of that. And when you have Norm on, he'll talk more about that part. But I was just bringing them into kind of the characters and the play itself. And when we go back to that idea of range, these 38, we'll say almost 40 students, the range of their experience with Shakespeare was really different. It was anywhere from, a few of the Duquesne students having read or studied Shakespeare in high school, and some of the inside men having never read it, and some of the Duquesne students as well. So it was. I don't think I've ever had and I've taught for 20 years, but I've never had a class that had that range, and it was a challenge, and it was powerful and wonderful, because we all met inside Shakespeare's text.
But that text, Susan, I'm thinking when I encounter that text, there were I'm thinking, what are these? It's not like everyday American English. Again, it's almost like another language. And you're saying that these people, many of whom had no exposure to this, understood it, got into it?
Thank you for that question. We talked about that the first day I was there, that it is a different language, but I asked us all to not maybe approach it intellectually and not study it in that way, but to speak the words and let ourselves respond to how they feel in our mouths, how they sound, and our own kind of response to hearing them and saying them. We're too often taught, certainly in classrooms, to have this thinking about literature, but there are other ways to experience literature, and that helps us understand it. I am kind of trained in Kristen Linkletter's technique, and her work with Shakespeare was really kind of phenomenal. And you can understand it. You can understand it even if you don't know what the word literally means. You can look it up later.
Right.
But there's a way that the word is. I mean, Shakespeare writes that way. I mean, even in that first class, I gave them the experience of, or the example of Juliet when she's speaking, "Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus' lodging." You don't have to understand the references and all she's talking about to know that she's a young woman waiting for her lover. The images are hot and there's a momentum. She is longing and filled with desire. Everyone gets that, and when you're watching it, because Shakespeare didn't write this play to be studied in the classroom. He wrote it to be experienced by an audience, and that happens as long as we can get those editors and all of that stuff, those demons, out of our heads and just meet Shakespeare halfway and just kind of come to the text honestly and be willing to say, okay, what is that? And try. And every student, all of them, had to learn 20 lines to memorize. I told them that day one, that we're all doing that. And I said that there's a way we understand things when we bring them into our bodies and learn them. And believe me, that was a struggle. There were, out of the 38, probably over 30 of them, did not want to do that, did not, agree with me. I had no idea what they were thinking. And the Duquesne students are just very, they know how to be students. They're successful at that, at being good students. That's why they're there. But that doesn't, in some ways, the inside men took it more seriously than probably the majority of the Duquesne students.
I bet.
And I knew, and I also knew that even though the inside men were coming with all their insecurities about being students, and that's years of that, because school was not a place where they succeeded for the most part.
Right.
I'm not sure if any of them had successful school experiences. So they're coming with all of that baggage, and a lot of it's very painful. And yet, there we were. and it takes, I mean, I'm going to be doing the class next fall, and I hope you can, join me in person to see and witness the courage that it takes anyone to kind of approach these lines and give them your breath and your heart and get up in front of a room and speak them. And there we were. But we did start by reading the play, and we were reading it and reading it out loud right away from day one, and just kind of going through it. And to be honest, the Duquesne students, even the ones who had, studied Hamlet, didn't know what was going on. So, yeah, it's very different to study a play as a play. Yeah, it's
I love
what
it.
directors and actors have to do, really. Yeah, and they said that the Duquesne students said, "Boy, I didn't know all this. We never, Spark Notes just doesn't cut it." So there we were.
Wow, just wow. So, you mentioned the public source, which I hope most of the audience does subscribe to, did a piece on this. I have talked about that piece before, and I put on my Facebook page, I put it on, and also that amazing video that was in it of one of the inside students doing a soliloquy or a passage, and it was the most gut wrenching, visceral reading of Shakespeare that I think I've ever heard. I found it stunning. Stunning.
Yeah, it's well, so one thing I want to say that I noticed in the beginning, I felt this way right at the beginning, is I had a sense that the inside men were going to respond possibly more strongly to the play than the outside students, because the inside men, none of them were 18 years old. They were older. So they had more life experience. And they also had tough life experience.
Yeah.
These are men that had tough lives on the streets in their neighborhoods, and Hamlet, you know, they would understand deeply what is going on with the family dynamics, with the relationship dynamics between Hamlet and Ophelia, the idea of whose turf is what and who's taking over and who's in power. And once those doors were opened up and they weren't confined by their insecurities about, language and, their backgrounds in classrooms, then there we were. And the questions and the exploration of Hamlet was so profound and rich. I learned a lot in that class in the fall, and so did Jeff, McCurry, the
The
philosopher.
philosopher.
I mean, we were both just very much, we were all learning from each other. And also in terms of the performance, in that open source article, you'll see, for those of you that read it, and I hope you do, you'll see a photo of a young man with, they created the skull of Yorick out of like paper mache, out of like tape and paper and just tape. And it's so beautiful. They brought it to that reading that performance that we did, and I didn't know they had done that. And he has it. You'll see it in the photo. But he did that scene, and we never got as far as that scene. But that was what he learned. And D, which is his kind of nickname and name that he goes by, when he was rehearsing, and kind of looking at Yorick, and we as a class, and because in the class, when someone's rehearsing and working on their part, we are all the directors and the ensemble. And that's how we treat that room. We are all the players, and we all contribute to what do we see? What are we hearing? What might he want to do, or she, because some of the outside students were women. And looking at Yorick's relationship with Hamlet, and Dee opened up to that, and there was a tenderness in him when he did those lines that I had never seen in him, and I had never seen in a production of Hamlet.
Wow.
There were moments in that room at the Allegheny County Jail, and I said this to all the students, because they wanted to know if they could watch parts of the films and whatever. And I said, absolutely. I said, because then you're going to see the directors and filmmakers' interpretations of what we're doing here, but don't for a moment think they're any better than what's happening in this room. Because I have been moved, profoundly moved, by the moments in this play, in this room, that only live theater can get, and it will never be repeated. So watch it with that eye. Don't assume, oh, they got it. It's better because it's a film. And I know by the end we all agreed to that, because there were moments like Sean that you're referring to, when he took on Hamlet's, soliloquy, that he was willing to dive as deeply as he could into that language and what he was doing to meet Hamlet in that moment of Hamlet's self-hatred.
It's wow. I was thinking that this work, this class, is potentially life changing for everybody involved in it, for the people in the jail, for the students from Duquesne, for the teachers like you, that it is absolutely potentially life changing.
I think that's what happens when you put people in a room together and let them listen to each other. yeah, that's what can happen, and that's certainly what's keeping me going right now. Um, but I think because this this was that class at the Allegheny County Jail. I'm also teaching at the Women's Reintegration Center in Cleveland, and also doing a memoir class at the Grafton, the prison in Ohio. Um, and I think in all of those, the text is only Shakespeare at the Allegheny County Jail, but actually I'm teaching now also this semester at the Allegheny County Jail, and there we're looking at writing and telling our own stories. And these are men. Now the Duquesne students, there are a couple of Duquesne students in that class, but it's not it's not that same inside out
Uh-huh.
class. And for the men inside, they haven't been heard. I mean, to have your voice heard and your story heard in your voice, powerful. I mean, I think if we did more of that, maybe some of the people that are making decisions in the world right now, maybe if they had their stories heard, they wouldn't be doing some of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I think we all need that, and it is powerful. And I agree with you; it is life changing, and it's powerful to be in that room and witness that. Um, yeah,
I
I mean,
wonder if
prison is a
I,
sad place to be,
yeah.
because
I
it's a
wonder
hard
if you
place
could
to
talk
be.
about, I forget who it was, and you certainly don't have to. I'm not sure it was to be made public, but that you initially, someone in uh, supervisory capacity at the prison was very dubious about this entire thing, and by the time it had ended, wrote you and Norm and the others just this extraordinary uh, letter about how blown away they were about the impact.
Right, that was the new assistant superintendent, and yeah, I didn't know that they were dubious. I mean, it's a lot of work for the prison also. I mean, because there are all these rules that they have to get through. And, for example, I wanted everyone to have a script. Everyone needed to have a copy of Hamlet. Um, so the Duquesne students, they got their copies. And then we ordered these copies for the men inside. But in Pennsylvania, you can't there's this idea of paper and whether paper can go into the prison because of there's been
Drugs
some
on it or something, some kind
problems
of,
with that. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
something. So
So so so then we got the books in. We finally got the books in through this incredible energy and work of people in prison helping us. But then the books had to be locked up in a cabinet. And can we take a moment and pause at what it's like at the end of a class for men inside to come over to you at the end of class, right as they're going to be escorted back to their cells, and say, can I take my copy of Hamlet up to my cell? And to have to say no.
I
What world are we in where these men are asking to bring
Hamlet.
Hamlet to their cells, and we have to say no because of these rules. Now, my hat is off to the people at the jail who really worked this and did, in the last 4 weeks, get those copies to the men in their cells. And I can't even imagine what they had to do that.
Ridiculous.
But here we are asking them to learn lines, and they're writing them, on pieces of scrap paper, or even sometimes on their hands, so they can memorize them for the next week.
Oh,
Okay, let me get 4 lines down. And here we are. So these things that we don't expect, but anyway, yeah.
you know, it's, I hear these stories. I just want to weep. I want to weep at what we do to each other, to these. I mean, I don't. So, as you've mentioned, this is not the only place where we warehouse people that you work in, and you've been going into prisons and jails for years and years and years. And I just want to note that Susan is I bet, you know, totally wet, naked and wet. You probably weigh 98 pounds. I mean, she's just this tiny, tiny firebrand of a being. And have you ever been frightened? Because I mean, the jail's one thing, but you've gone into penitentiaries with, with lifers and others, serving really serious sentences for violence and other things. I mean,
Yeah.
have you ever been
So
frightened?
no, thank you for that. And one thing, before we take that on, I just want to say, and let's make sure we talk a little bit about it, even though I know you'll probably talk more about it with Norm and Farouk. But it's the program is through Duquesne, and it's also the House of Life, which is this incredible program and project at in Pittsburgh, which is part of this, and it's for reentry, because that when you say you want to weep, the thing about Allegheny County Jail is those men are going to be sentenced. Sean, who you were very moved by, he's out.
Yes,
He's out, and part of his being out even had to do with this class. But
I know.
but anyway, he's out, and um and reentry is its own. I mean,
Struggle.
that's where we should be, not us in this interview, but just as a society in focusing. But House of Life is very important in Pittsburgh and what they're doing there. In terms of me, yeah, I've been going into prisons probably at least 13 years, and I came to it accidentally. I didn't know that I was going to work in prisons, and the idea was not mine. I cannot take credit for it. It came to me when I was performing my play in the Edinburgh Fringe. Actually, that was even longer ago than that. And a woman at the Anne Frank Center in Scotland asked if I had brought the play into prisons, because the Anne Frank Centers internationally have relationships with prisons where they send Anne Frank's diaries to
Susan,
incarcerated
I need to
people
interrupt. I
for
need to
reading.
interrupt to explain
Yeah.
that Susan has is probably best known for a play about a woman, Eddie Hillesum, who well, I don't even know where to start, but this is how I actually ended up meeting Susan. It was because of her doing that one woman play, and she's done this play about Eddie Hillesum um, all over the world. And so I just wanted to explain. So you were in Edinburgh in Scotland
Right. And
doing Eddie.
right, that was in its infancy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and as soon as this woman from the Anne Frank Scotland Center who saw it, it's just a venue. We had coffee after, and she said, "Have you thought of bringing it to prisons?" And I immediately thought, oh, "Of course," and no. And so then I started thinking about that afterwards, and it was in prison, actually, in Minnesota, because I had a prison project where I was in 2 prisons, and they were with lifers, for over a month, where I got to read the diaries, Eddie Hillesum's diaries, with the incarcerated men and women. And it was in that experience that I learned that Eddie's story is a prison story. Eddie is
Sure.
imprisoned in 2 different camps, concentration camps. And although her imprisonment is different, and the incarcerated people I work with in no way compare their imprisonment with hers. In my performing the play or reading the diaries with incarcerated people, it was immediate that they were responding very strongly to her writing about imprisonment and how when her freedoms are being taken away, that her inner universe is expanding. And the incarcerated people have been very moved by that and inspired by that. So right away, it was something that was growing. That's a whole other conversation. What you're asking me is my own experience with it. And what I didn't know was how comfortable, what a word to use, right? But that's the one, how comfortable I would feel inside prison. And that was, I did not expect that. I don't even know if I realized it right away. But my first prison was in Maine. And then I went on to Framingham, Massachusetts. Since then, I've mostly been in high security male prisons. And so I usually am with lifers. It's rare that I'm in a jail. And it was probably 3 or 4 prisons into doing this work when educational people in the prison or guards started saying to me, boy, the men are really responding to you and responding to this work. That doesn't usually happen that way. And then that started me thinking about, well, why might that be happening? And because I myself felt really comfortable. And it was that we all grew up together in the same way. Almost all the incarcerated people I work with grew up like I did. They grew up poor. I grew up in the projects near Coney Island in Brooklyn. And they were rough and dangerous and poor. I don't know whose brilliant idea it was to put a lot of poor people together in a housing development, but there you go.
Not a good idea.
That's where these men and women grew up, and we knew that without knowing it. And I mean, it might come up, if somebody goes to my website, Eddie Project, they'll see there's a trailer there where they happen to film it at the moment in this prison in Trenton. Somebody asks a question and it comes up, and you can see the women visibly responding to the fact that, oh, this person who was talking to them actually grew up like they did. That is a moment. So it happens to be on that film that's on the website.
Wow.
But have I ever felt frightened? Actually, it's interesting that you ask that, because the first prison I went to, which was in Maine, which was a women's prison, after the play, there's the second act is a conversation, and an incarcerated woman who hadn't spoken at all asked me that. She said, were you scared of coming here? And I said, scared of what? And
Wow.
she paused and said, of us. And I said, no, are people scared of you? I said, I was scared of the doors, all those doors, and the way they lock behind you. Which, is deliberate, the way they set that up so that when you're in a prison, you're imprisoned as well. So I said, no, I said, the line is thin. And what's scary is knowing how thin that line is, because I don't want to be here. And she thanked me and said, the line is thin. I said, yeah, people that are coming are not scared of you. I mean, that's if that's what they're doing, they're using that as an excuse, because that's not what they're scared of. And no, I've never been frightened. And I've had fights break out, in the room where I was leading a workshop, but I wasn't frightened. Yeah.
You've developed,
the
Susan. Yeah, I want to
people
just.
are very grateful and gracious. Yeah, and grateful for the work.
You've established genuine friendships with some of the people that you have met inside, who are now outside, correct?
Right, formerly incarcerated. Yeah, the formerly incarcerated men that are um, part of the Duquesne House of Life, you know, think tank that's part of Duquesne. I've been working with them for several years now, and yeah, and some of them are friends and mentors to me. I have learned a lot. I am learning a lot from these men.
And just to make clear again, these are men who were serving life terms, usually.
Yes, I mean a couple of them. Farouk, who you'll meet, was, and then he was able to get off because of that. Whatever Pennsylvania did at a few years ago. I mean, he
Yeah,
never
when they
thought he
finally
would do
said
that.
enough already,
So
that somebody who didn't really kill somebody shouldn't be serving life. That.
yeah, I mean, he can talk more about that,
Yeah.
but right, and Foster. I mean, so yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, the men I'm working with are, for the most part, are there for the formerly incarcerated men are non-violent crimes. I mean, most of the, I mean, it depends. It's always depending on where you are. And I don't ask what someone has done.
Yeah.
That's they're my students or my colleagues or whatever the focus is of the class itself. But what happened was I had started with the play, and then what happened was, because I'm a teacher and I love to teach, the prison started asking me, well, what else can you do? And so it just became a natural kind of evolution that I would go and perform the play, but then in the afternoon, I would lead writing workshops. And I've done 8 of those tours in Scotland. So I've been to the same prisons in Scotland, and I was just there last year, not this past December, but last December, and I'll be going back actually to a prison in northern Scotland, and I spent a week doing. I did the play, but then we worked on writing.
How does, I'm just curious, how do the prison in Scotland compare to the prison in the United States?
Yes, so that's a great question. My first prison in Scotland was Barlinnie, which is in Glasgow, and I brought Eddie there. That this was the first, so this was a while ago, and I performed the play, and then we have this conversation. We start the conversation, and then the governor, that's the superintendent, they're called the governor there, comes up after about a few minutes of conversation, and he says, we're going to continue this conversation out in the other room with tea and buns. And I don't know what kind of look I must have given him, but there we go into the other room where 2 members of the Scottish Parliament were there. And we are now standing in this other room speaking to the men and these 2 members of Parliament and guards, and we're having a conversation. And the governor said to me, you look surprised. They don't do this in the States?
Jesus.
I said, no, we don't have receptions with tea and buns and, no, we don't, we don't, and have this conversation. That's not what we do in the States. And he said, you're here through the education department. We're trying to get these men back on the streets.
Yeah.
If we don't teach them how to socialize, how are we going to do that?
Oh, God, we're so stupid.
And I said, I'd like to bring you back to the States. I mean,
God, we're
how,
so stupid.
now, I mean, that's what Norm is doing. That's what House of Life is doing. That's what this incredible prison, Grafton, in Northeast Ohio, has this unbelievable. It takes one man, right?
Yeah.
Justin Scott, one man who has a vision, and he's created an entire block at the prison, Grafton, that is a reentry house.
God.
So that when these men get out, they have to apply, but they are learning how to have more freedom and more rights and more responsibility to help them in that transition. So it is possible. It is possible. I'm not sure under this administration that we're going to move forward in
Oh,
that way. It's
please.
going to
Oh,
be
please.
people
No,
doing kind
no.
of one step at a time in their own world.
They can't.
But
They can't look past their noses. They can't see that. They only see what you're spending money helping these terrible people when what you're doing is ensuring that they can. Yeah, I mean they don't get it. That they don't understand
well,
ever.
so something. No,
Oh,
and I want to say something about respond to what you just said, which is interesting. This mindset of terrible people. So these formerly incarcerated men that I work with,
yeah,
that most were put in for life, they come out and they devote their lives to making this world a better place.
yeah,
They work tirelessly
yeah.
to do this. They, during COVID, they were going to the projects and all kinds of underserved communities in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, making sure people understood what was happening, that they had masks, that they had food, that they had tests. It is unbelievable to me to see people who have been treated for most of their lives with brutality um, to come out of these cages and devote their waking hours to helping the world. And yes, I think that this idea of these terrible people that are locked away or who deserve. I mean, it is heartbreaking to see, to be part of and to witness a prison system that just can't punish enough.
Yeah,
It's like how much more can we punish?
yeah.
This
Totally
idea of
punitive.
punishment, when does it end? Because
Yeah,
losing one's freedom, what is worse than that?
yeah.
And I have never met an incarcerated person that did not take responsibility and own their crime. But what do we do with that? And what is our, what is, why do we want to cage a fifth of our population, and move towards, I mean, I agree with Michelle Alexander, move towards this kind of slave system. It's just another form of slavery. It is heartbreaking. It would make you just weep.
Well, Susan, I mean, I know we could talk for literally weeks, but our time is up. How can people who want to support your work, and we haven't even talked about that you do this in underserved schools as well, and is there any way anyone listening can support your work? I
Well,
mean,
I mean, I haven't had the webmaster update the website, but I promise to get to that soon. But go on to the website. It's www.etiproject.org, so that you can be aware of, the work that's coming. I'm bringing it to a prison. I'm bringing it to Fayette or Mercer, so outside of Pittsburgh soon. But there's going to be a week, the week of February 24th, where people in Pittsburgh can come to these open events and they'll meet the formerly incarcerated men. There are going to be conversations. John Edgar Wideman, the amazing writer, is going to be there speaking to his brother Farouk. It'll be moderated by Roger Gwenvere Smith on that incredible book, Brothers and Keepers. So there'll be a week of events that people can go
wonderful.
to. And
So that's
I will try to get that on the website. Thank you. Thank you
okay,
for,
no, because I mean, listen, Susan doesn't get rich doing this work, and she doesn't get paid a lot doing this work. This is, in many respects, sort of a ministry and requires support. Eddie, ETTY Project, Eddie Project. .com. If you are looking to help.
No, .org. .org.
Dot .org.
It's
Dot
educational.
.org. Dot .org. Dot
So,
.org.
.org.
And I
Right.
mean, this is a way to help somebody who's out there doing what you and I maybe cannot do, moving. And what we can do is give her the resources, even if it's a few dollars. Susan, can't wait to see you. And thank you so
Yep.
much
Thank
for
you.
everything. Okay, you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Goodbye. Just a remarkable woman. Remarkable woman. I don't know what else to say. Uh, Extraordinary. I wanted a little bit of time to share with you some good stuff about how we can act in this coup we are watching play out. Is mind-blowing coup. Um, uh, Wait a minute here. I'm just going to get a quick email in. Roger says, I appreciate what your guest is doing. I long ago came to the conclusion that not only does our country imprison more people than anyone else in the so-called free world, what an irony there, right? The prisoners are usually doomed for a life of poverty and stigmatized as convicts forever. He goes on to say a co-worker's sister and brother-in-law are Allegheny County prison guards, and a friend who works as a social worker treating addiction in prison in the northern part of the state say that the guards are worse than the prisoners. They like beating up people. What a breath of fresh air Susan must be in an environment of despair. Yeah. Well, I have, through her, met some of these formerly incarcerated people, and the love they have for her is extraordinary, and it goes both ways. Uh, uh, in the near future, I intend to have the Duquesne professor Norm Conti, who is responsible for much of this work that's coming out of Duquesne, and one of the formerly incarcerated lifers, Farouk, who was mentioned, who was serving a life sentence at Western Penn. Um, and he is the brother of the novelist John Edgar Wideman, and obviously the book that Wideman wrote called what Brothers and Keepers, whatever, is a powerful thing. I just wanted to share a few quick things with you. Somebody brought to my attention an app that I have downloaded. I'm telling you to like write your Congress people, and then you start thinking, well, I don't know how, or this or that, or call them. There is an app, it's free. You can download it, just go into the App Store, and it's called 5 Calls, numeral 5 calls. Okay. And it facilitates you're doing just that, spreading your power that you have. Um, it helps you find whatever government person you want. It gives you numbers. It even gives you topics and scripts that you might want to employ. And it's all free. It's called 5 Calls. So you could do that, which will be helpful to you. We talked about writing the postcards. I saw in some publication today that the Senate phones have just been swamped, where they normally get 40. I can't remember, 40 calls. That can't be possible. Just 40 calls an hour. They're getting thousands. So there's a reason why people are getting busy signals. Um, I also want to give you some news sources. These come from former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, and he says these are what I rely on. I'm just going to list them off here: Democracy Now!, Business Insider, The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The American Prospect, The Guardian, ProPublica, Heather Cox Richardson, and then obviously there are some on Substack. If you're not following a lot of those, it'd behoove you to do so. And speaking of Heather Cox Richardson, her piece today is indicative of why you want to have her in your inbox every day. Heather Cox Richardson. Google her and subscribe. Again, free. I don't even know where to start. Her piece today is just brilliant. Little excerpts from it. Trump's threatened tariff war blew up in his face after his vow to put tariffs of 25% on Mexico and Canada sent the stock market plunging. He was left to declare victory over Mexico and Canada after phone calls in which they essentially assured him they would do things they were already doing. Last night, he horrified even his own advisors, she writes. This is a day late, by saying that the U.S. would take over Gaza. There had been no meetings with the State Department or Pentagon. His senior staff knew nothing about this. On and on and on and on and on. Trump's comments were so badly received in the Middle East that Secretary of State Rubio should probably be getting additional security for the diplomatic facilities, our diplomats and diplomatic facilities there. Here's one that's frightening, and it quotes another source that obviously she uses, called, in this marvelous title, The Nerd Reich. Nerd Reich. And I'm going to share this with you. Today, journalist Gil Duran of the Nerd Reich noted that a thinker popular with the technological elite, with Musk and the bros, laid out a plan in 2022 to gut the U.S. government and replace it with a dictatorship. This guy's name is Curtis Yarvin, and he wrote, it would essentially be, and this is what's going on, it would essentially be a reboot of the country. And it would require a full power start, which is a reference to restarting a stalled starship by jumping to full power, which has the risk of actually destroying the ship. Yarvin called for giving absolute sovereignty to a single organization headed by the equivalent of a rogue chief executive officer who would destroy the public institutions of the democratic government. Trump, whom Yarvin dismissed as weak, would give power to that CEO, obviously read Musk here, who would run the executive branch without any interference from the Congress or courts. Most existing important institutions, public and private, will be shut down and replaced with new and efficient systems. And once loyalists have replaced civil servants, which is occurring now, in a new ideological army, the CEO will throw it directly against the administrative state, not bothering with confirmed appointments, just using temporary heads as needed. And the job of this, what they're calling a landing force, is not to govern. The new regime must take over the country and perform the real function of the old and ideally perform them much better. It must seize all points of power without respect for protections. J.D. Vance has echoed Yarvin's prescriptions in the past, and Musk now appears to be putting his blueprint into action. Amazing times we are living through. Who knew it could be so fast? Who knew before a month is out that these sons of bitches who didn't hide what they were going to do, who put it on paper and media covered it, Project 2025. And they said on day one, they told us they were going to do this. And they are doing it so quickly. And the damage they are doing is so immense that it will take, if we're ever able to, decades and decades and decades to recover, if we have a country to recover. Astonishing. Astonishing. That's it for me this week. By the time I talk to you Monday, who the hell knows what's going to happen? I want to point out that, people who are, being recalcitrant like me, are being silenced. One of our listeners, Mord, wrote this to me today. I've been, he said he's been sending, he listened to the show and about writing and calling, and he said, I've been catching up on the show, and I got all fired up and wrote my South Carolina Congress people. It was so easy, and I posted it on multiple social medias and instantly got banned from Musk's Twitter, from X. He got banned for putting up the kind of information that I've been sharing with you. Banned. It wasn't a nasty post. It was, here, if you want to complain to your member of Congress, is how, and he had put out information. He was banned. So assuming I'm here on Monday, I do want to also tell you that next week will be my last show for at least 2 weeks, or maybe one week, I think. I have some surgery that I'm hoping will take only about 8-9 days after to be able to get back in the saddle. But next week, those 4 days will be my last opportunity to talk to you for a little while, if forever. Who the hell knows anything? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Be safe. Be strong.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.